What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to be talking about people who intentionally use big, complicated words in order to confuse you or make things hard to understand. And I've experienced this a few times in my life, and typically it's because they're hiding something or they don't want you to understand. And oftentimes it's very borderline. So they're not using extravagantly complicated words, but you see stuff in their tonality or the way that they express it, and their attitude. Their attitude's a really big one. And what this ultimately means is that a lot of times in life you will think things are complicated or hard to understand because the person is intentionally doing so. And you'll see this in a variety of fields. Business, a lot of times in sales, they will do this, especially when they're trying to get you to buy their product, or if they're trying to recruit talent. Pretty much that means just they're trying to find people to take their jobs, but they want to draw them in, and so they're intentionally vague. But then when you press, they intentionally use a lot of complicated words to impress you and at the same time confuse you. Now this happens a lot in business, which is such a horrible practice because I just find that, either way you're screwing yourself over. You know the job is crap deep down, which is why you're doing this, and then you know that once the employees get into the job and finally get there, they realize that they've been crap screwed over. And this always, I find like there's this thing that's still going on where this company is selling knives, and they're pretty much doing this, and they're using a lot of these, tactics to draw you in at first. And I'm not singling this company out. There's others out there who literally they'll pull you in with some sort of initial investment of like $100, and then you're screwed because you're devoted to it because you've spent the money to be trained or whatever. And again, it goes beyond business. It goes to school. It goes to people you just interact with. Sometimes you just meet new people who like to impress you, or make themselves seem big with big, complex words. And it's really funny when you understand what all the words mean, and you definitely feel that this guy is trying a little bit too hard to use these words, or he's just like using them when there's a lot quicker and faster ways with much more simpler words to get the same point across. And that's one of the things I always sort of ascribe to most of the time. Sometimes, I can't help but use better, words because I feel like I just want to, for whatever reason, to train my vocabulary. But a lot of times it's like, hey, you're talking to a person who probably doesn't know these complicated words, and if you just use simpler words, you can get the same point across faster. And it starts to make you wonder, why the heck is he doing this? And most of the time it's always borderline, so it's like they won't be using too complex words, and on top of that they'll have this attitude of, hey, it's cut and dry, it's black and white, it's very simple, I can't believe you don't understand this. Or, hey, this is some complex, complicated stuff, and I'm illustrating this with my complicated vocabulary to boggle you. And it happens a lot of times in other things like school. Maybe the student wants to confuse the person he's presenting to so that he doesn't have to elaborate too much, and he wants a good grade, and he's kind of scared that if he makes it too simple and he uses simpler words, the teacher will call him out and say, hey, this is kind of not the best project you're doing here. It's too simplistic. And so this is the sort of stuff that goes on and on. And I think, for a lot of things like, again, companies and businesses and so forth, it's just very inefficient. And I see it in personal things as well, not just businesses. But I get irritated, I get annoyed by it. It's stupid, and it's inefficient, and it's just, behind the door. It's they're trying to trick you. And what I've learned is that there's a lot of bad people as well as good people in this world, and there are people who are willing to literally just be the nicest people ever to you up front and then cheat behind your back, which is horrendous. And I've learned through Warren Buffett that at least in America, because of the regulations and laws and so forth, the businesses that end up succeeding in the long run, we're talking 10 years, 20 years, to build the greatest empire, such as Coca-Cola, they are the ones who have just fine finance, fine accounting, fine business, and they do not have to resort to cheating or lying or trickery of this sort. On the personal level, from person to person, of management, or of deeper levels like or simpler levels. And basically the whole concept, in my opinion, is that and this was sort of reiterated by Ken Fisher, who is the son of Phil Fisher, who did a book called Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits. But in Ken Fisher's book, which I did a book review on, I didn't really like that much, but his book, he mentioned one point which I did agree with, which was that companies who are doing well, who are making a lot of money, do not need to lie or cheat. They're already making all this money and doing well, and therefore they don't have to lie or account for do accounting fraud or anything like that, or trick their employees or anything like that, because they're making all this money already. They're doing well. They don't need to do this. And some people will be like, well, it's hard to even tell if a company is good or bad. It's very tough. Just look at Enron. The books, if you look at the books for Enron, everyone had their eyes on it. It was the fourth largest energy company in America, and yet everyone had their eyes on it, and all these auditors were reviewing it, and you couldn't, and all these people were fooled by it. So you can't even tell if someone's doing bad stuff. Well, that's on the business corporate level, but even on the person-to-person level, outside of business, both of these areas, I think it's a lot clearer if you just listen to your gut. I feel like if you just look, if you have a decent accounting background and you understand the financials, if you just looked at Enron's annual reports, you would have seen something was up, or you have declared that this was a company that's outside of your circle of competence or knowledge to understand. And according to Warren Buffett, you would have just been out of there. You wouldn't have even bothered investing in Enron. And yet a lot of people are still making excuses to this day, like, oh, it would have been impossible to tell if Enron was a failure. You couldn't have predicted it. Everyone had their eyes on Enron. There's all these auditors looking at Enron, but I think it's bogus. On top of that, if you look at something like person to person, you kind of just have to trust your gut and see what's up. But it's a difficult thing, and myself and everyone else should be working on it, because it's not simple and it's not easy to accomplish, and it's typically hard to figure out. Sometimes, you know, it's a gut sort of thing, and from emerging worlds and other nations and countries out there who don't have as regulated or safe practices as America, they have even a greater potential for fraud or trickery, and they get away with it. So it's a tough world out there. That's all we want to say. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in my next video.